Hey everyone, it's Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. This is going to be one of those series that we're going to ask you to go back and listen to part one on what we've entitled Designed for Human Connection. Sher and I so believe that understanding what secure attachment means and how we develop secure attachment in our life is so life changing for our healing. So last week, Sher, you and I camped out a little bit on what does it feel like to have a secure attachment and what difference that has made in our lives. And today we're going to talk about more of the dismissive avoidant attachment wounding. And what we want to say, and we said this last week, but if you're just listening today, we want to say that dismissive avoidants have anxiety just like anxious attachers have anxiety, but how they respond to it is differently. And I want to bring this up because there is this notion, and I listen to a lot of attachment type podcasts. There is this notion that dismissive avoidance, it can feel like they're kind of getting picked on, right? Because they're the ones that pull away. They're the ones that don't want to have the conversation. Okay. They're trying to find safety through pulling away and being with themselves. It's what they had to do as a little child.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But Cher, can you talk a little bit of why that might have developed and why do dismissive avoidance find safety in pulling away?
Yeah, I think it's important to just name like there are three main categories of insecure attachment. And so dismissive avoidant is one, fearful or anxious is another, and then the one that's kind of that disorganized that is some people would say it's a very small percentage of people who are in the disorganized category, but you and I feel like a lot of people are actually in that, where it's kind of this sometimes avoidance, sometimes anxious, and that vacillating back and forth, so that the person that we're in relationship doesn't really ever know what's coming at them. So the person who tends to be more avoidant, and we clarified last week, and I really like this, they are not avoiding the relationship. In their deepest heart, they're not avoiding the relationship. They're not avoiding even connection. They're avoiding the anxiety that they feel in their body because something is happening that doesn't feel good. It might be conflict, it might be misunderstanding, but it might be somebody who's pursuing them or saying, I want more from you, right? And because they feel anxiety in their body, they're moving away, they're turning away, they're avoiding. And then typically what happens is the other person then gets anxious about how their friend or their partner is pulling away and avoiding, and so they get more anxious and they get more fearful and they pursue more, and so you get this dynamic going of this relationship that is just hurtful for both, and in reality both are trying to deal with the anxiety that they're feeling in their body because of what's happening in the relationship.
Mhm. Yes, and so that relationship for a dismissive avoidant, if they're partnered, they can be partnered with an anxious attachment, another avoidant, or a fearful avoidant, or disorganized. Mostly, from my understanding, is that not always, but the dismissive avoidant is oftentimes drawn to a more anxious attached person because anxious attachers pursue.
Yeah.
Okay, so it actually feels good to them.
Yeah.
Somebody wants me, somebody's paying attention to me.
Yeah.
And this is where I want to just pause for a minute. If you identify more with, and it doesn't mean that you can't even have some of those other insecure attachment wounds, we're talking about mostly identifying with.
Yeah.
If you identify with that, most likely in your childhood, you initially tried to let your needs be known, and mostly you were either too much or you were left to figure things out on your own most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what happens is you create anxiety around having needs, and that anxiety doesn't ever get soothed. Like, we're talking about secure attachment being seen, safe, or seen, soothed, safe, and secure. The dismissive avoidant, their needs mostly did not get soothed. So they had to figure out a way to do that on their own. And can we just pause and have compassion for that little underneath the ways that dismissive avoidance can show up and fit? And it feels very hurtful in relationships.
Mm,
Like, when I need you, you're pulling away.
mm-hmm,
Doesn't make sense that you're telling me you love me,
mm,
but you're leaving me.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for that person who avoiding the pain was survival.
Survival.
And we might be talking about, and I'll just give a couple of examples. I think it's important to think about even back to in my generation, a lot of babies were given a bottle, propped up on a pillow in a crib, like not held, not cuddled, um, often not even attended to when they cried. Like it was, they were left alone to figure out how to self soothe. And for that child, often it was just numbing, shutting out the pain, and um, stopping, even in a high degree, stopping asking for help. And
Yeah.
so, for example, for me, I remember my mother saying, "Oh, you were such a good baby. I could just leave you in your crib for hours, and you didn't even cry." And so that was, so what does a baby do in that situation? They somehow our brain and our body figure out how to survive. Nobody teaches us. Nobody tends to us. We just
Which
and
means you
so
at some point stop crying,
yeah, absolutely.
because
Stopped asking for help. Yeah,
crying will not work.
crying will not work.
Let's go to the source of this and say that a lot of these parents were actually told by academia that this is good for the baby.
Yeah,
And we are saying bullshit.
yeah,
And is there a way to help your child have resilience, become independent in a healthy way? Absolutely. We're not condemning that. What we are saying is it doesn't start in infancy or toddlerhood. It just doesn't.
no,
And we know that babies and toddlers who have secure attachment actually are the ones that are more resilient.
yeah, yeah,
And
100%.
so I feel passionate about this because I felt the tension of this in my own motherhood when people were doing this, letting your baby cry it out. I didn't know anything about anything except I know, hell no,
Right.
ain't
Yep.
gonna work,
No.
right? And so does that mean that I never let my babies cry? Of course, but something like the idea of letting my baby build resilience by crying it out did not land with me, and still doesn't. And I want to hold this space tenderly. I truly believe that those who did that were told to do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we're not here to blame. We've said that over and over. We are not here to blame, but we are here. Like if okay, so let's just say you're a parent that did that. You might need to do some repair with your adult child or your teenage child. Like they may not even know what you're talking about, but you can say, I'm having awareness that I did some things when you were a baby that I thought were right. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing I think it might have hurt you. And how do you move toward that with repair, right? And so we're not here to blame anybody, but the reality is that when we listen to experts or when we do what we're doing just to cope and survive,
We did what our parents did.
we end up we were hurt, we end up then often causing hurt to our children. And thank goodness that there are ways to repair this, and that's why we're talking about it. We aren't here to blame. We're here to say, okay, if you're struggling with this, here are some reasons why that things you may have experienced very early in life. Now what? Now what are you going to do?
Mhm. So, what we know about the dismissive avoidant, not just from science and these studies, but from those who've come forward that have healed that insecure attachment wound. One of the biggest fears is rejection
Mm,
because it was the child whose needs got rejected again and again and again.
yeah,
So to feel need is to feel vulnerable and to open yourself up to be rejected again.
yeah.
So I have a lot of young adults in my life, and I actually work with a few right now. I was telling someone the other day, maybe it was you, like I've just noticed my heart of just compassion for anybody that I've noticed is more in that dismissive avoidant attachment wound that has never been able to see what's going on because they actually look very functional in society, and they also have so much anxiety.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like I've heard you talk about that before.
Well, I think also it's this difficulty even naming what we need, right? And again, going back to the baby who had to shut down their needs intuitively, subconsciously, right? Shut it down. I'm not going to need anything because when I sense I'm needing, there's a lot of pain there, and so we go through life not even able to recognize what we need, and for sure not ask for it because we are very self-sufficient and self-reliant. We will figure out how to take care of our own self, whatever that may be. So, yeah, what were you asking me specifically, Candace?
Well, just that rejection wound
Right. The fear,
underneath.
the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of saying I have a need because we don't have confidence that anybody can hold the the scope of what it is. That's and again, this is subconscious because consciously we often feel like we have a handle on it, but subconsciously we feel like, whoa, there's a gaping wound here that if you come close, nobody knows what's going to happen.
Well, yes, and so for those that have more of that avoidant attachment wound, that's not your fault, by the way.
Hmm.
It is harder to like get help because you actually do have found a way to quote be okay with figuring things out on your own. But here's where some real data can come in is what does your life look like on a daily basis? Okay. What are you numbing? Are you disassociating? What is the level of intimacy in your relationships? So your life may look like it has no drama, you know, except that the ways that if you sit alone for a minute with yourself, you're in pain.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like you're in pain. And I feel so much compassion for those who have a stronger avoidant attachment wounding, Share?
Every single person is longing for meaningful connection. Every single person is longing for it. Sometimes we don't even recognize how much we're longing for it, but we're longing for it. And when fear of being vulnerable or fear of expressing a need stops us from having meaningful connection, we stay stuck in these places of emptiness and loneliness that we hate, but that feels like there's some sense of safety there.
Mhm. I'm just wondering, we want to move on in our next episode to the anxious attachment. But as we wrap this one up, I don't think we're going to go into all the ways that we heal avoidant attachment wound, because there are ways. I want to just leave our listeners with that you can, with help. And we know people who can help you,
Mm,
and we can help you.
mm,
And, when we look at what So That is doing, and we look at what Broken and the Beautiful is doing, by the way, they have a new website with teams in Lincoln, Nebraska, and remote teams that Share and I are now on, which we are so overwhelmed with gratitude. Um, we just want you to know, if there's something about this that you connect with, there's help out there. I mean, compassionate, extravagant. If you stay with it and you can find a little bit of courage to just say, I need help, you
mm,
literally will have people who will be so ready to sit in this space with you.
mm. I think too, Candace, when we were just talking before we pressed record, like we talked about a few things that people must do if they are wanting to heal, if they're wanting to overcome some of these chronic places of pain that are coming forth from their relationships or lack of intimacy in their relationships. Like a few things that come to my mind for this person that we're talking to today are: you must slow down the busyness that is taking all of your energy, because there's a numbing that can come through that, where you're spending all of your resources on keeping busy, whether that's your work or your kids or whatever. But so here's what you must do: you must slow down. You must slow down. You must. I hate to say the words, but you must ask for help. You must. Exactly what you're saying, Candace. There are people that will help you, like as was true for me and Candace, like going into our stories so that we can begin to understand, why are we anxious? Why are we avoidant? Like until we get closer to our stories, we don't know, we don't understand. And I can tell you now, I know why. I understand. Where does the ways that I show up in my relationships, why am I that way? I can tell you the exact stories, not all of them, but I can tell you some of the stories that correlate with what caused me to turn away, what caused me to feel anxious. And so those are a couple of things that come to my mind, like you must. And I say that with a lot of compassion, a lot of passion and a lot of compassion. But there's so much goodness. Like we were designed for human connection. And in the human connection that we are experiencing is so much of all of what we have longed for in life. In order to experience that, we must slow down and we must ask for help.
Mhm. Yeah, and I want to say that must is also actually an invitation.
Oh,
It's
100%.
an invitation into a little bit of courage. And I want to say, especially, it's not just for the dismissive avoidant, but I feel like this is important. Nobody has to know. Like, this isn't about exposing you or your wound or your stories. Cher and I, most people don't go do this stuff publicly, and we don't think most people should want to necessarily. I mean, if they do, that's amazing, and we support it. But we just want you to know, like, this can be contained in a really small, private space, and you never have to talk about it publicly.
No, that's right. And for years, I didn't. The first time I went to a therapist, I was scared to death somebody would see me. That is how antagonistic my community was toward reaching out for therapy even. And so which today thankfully it's I think it's mostly accepted that we can do that. But yes, I hear you and I agree, Candace. Like as a matter of fact, I would say don't tell. Don't tell a lot of people, maybe one trusted friend if you have somebody that can support you, but it's not meant to be out there because most people will not understand why you're doing this work.
Yeah, it's very true, friend.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's good to be with you today around the discussion of having a dismissive avoidant attachment wound. And next week, we will come back and talk about the anxious attachment wound or the preoccupied attachment wound.
Yeah. Thanks, Candace. Really good to be with you.
Love you, friend.
Love you too.